What is true love in Buddhism? Compassion that transforms relationships. Let us begin with a question. What does it mean to truly love someone without expecting anything in return? This is a question many of us have asked ourselves in some form. We often hear that love is about giving, but what happens when we attach our hopes, desires, and conditions to it? Can love remain pure? Or does it become something else? Something weighed down by expectations? In Buddhism, true love is something much deeper and freer than the love we often think of in daily life. It is not limited to romantic relationships or family bonds. Instead, it is an expression of universal compassion, a love that reaches everyone and everything without distinction or selfish motives. The Buddha spoke of metta, or loving kindness, as a boundless quality that radiates outward, embracing all beings without attachment. This kind of love matters deeply. By understanding and practicing true love as taught by the Buddha, we can transform not only our relationships, but also ourselves. We can learn to let go of the clinging and expectations that often lead to disappointment and pain. True love, as seen through the lens of Buddhism, is a path to peace, harmony, and liberation, not just for ourselves, but for everyone we encounter. Love, as understood in Buddhism, is not the same as the love we often talk about in everyday life. The Buddha taught that most of what we call love is actually attachment, desire, or dependency. This kind of love is conditional. It depends on whether someone meets our expectations or fulfills our needs. While it can bring joy, it often leads to suffering because it is rooted in clinging and fear of loss. For example, romantic love is frequently based on conditions like physical attraction, shared interests, or reciprocity. When these conditions change, the love may weaken or disappear, leaving behind feelings of disappointment or pain. The Buddha described this as part of dukkha, the inevitable dissatisfaction that arises from attachment. True love in Buddhism, however, is entirely different. It is unconditional and selfless, guided by four key qualities: loving kindness, metta; compassion, karuna; sympathetic joy, mudita; and equanimity, upekkha. These qualities are not based on what we can gain from others, but on a deep wish for their happiness and freedom from suffering. The Buddha emphasized that true love should be free from clinging. He said, "If you truly love someone, you do not try to possess them. Instead, you let them be free." This freedom allows love to flourish without becoming a source of pain. Practicing true love requires us to let go of the ego's demands and focus instead on the well-being of others. When we begin to approach love in this way, it transforms our relationships. We stop seeing others as sources of happiness or fulfillment and start seeing them as individuals with their own struggles, joys, and journeys. This shift not only reduces suffering, but also deepens the connection and understanding we share with others. Compassion, or karuna, lies at the very heart of true love in Buddhism. It is the deep, genuine wish to alleviate the suffering of others. Compassion is not just feeling sorry for someone or being moved by their pain. It is an active, selfless desire to help. When love is grounded in compassion, it is no longer about what we want or expect from others. It becomes about their well-being, their happiness, and their freedom. The Buddha often spoke about compassion as an essential quality for living a meaningful life. He said, "When you have compassion for someone, you do not see their faults." This does not mean ignoring harmful behaviors or being naive. Instead, it means seeing beyond the surface actions to recognize the shared humanity and struggles we all experience. Compassion allows us to love without judgment. It reminds us that everyone is fighting battles we cannot see. When someone is angry or unkind, it is often because they are suffering. Rather than reacting with frustration or anger, compassion encourages us to ask, what pain might they be carrying? This shift in perspective can transform the way we interact with others, softening our hearts and opening the door to understanding. Compassion and wisdom, a necessary balance. While compassion is vital, it must be paired with wisdom, prajna, to guide it. Without wisdom, compassion can become enabling or misguided. For example, if someone is engaging in harmful behavior, compassion does not mean allowing them to continue without consequences. True compassion seeks to help in a way that is both kind and effective. Imagine a loved one struggling with addiction. Compassion might lead you to want to ease their suffering, but wisdom reminds you that helping them requires more than simply offering comfort. It might mean encouraging them to seek professional help, even if they resist at first. This kind of balanced compassion, guided by wisdom, is what the Buddha taught. The Buddha explained, "If with a pure mind a person speaks or acts, happiness follows them like a shadow that never leaves." This is the essence of compassionate action, helping others in a way that is free from selfish motives and rooted in the intention to bring happiness and relief from suffering. Practical applications of compassion. Compassion is not just an abstract idea. It is something we can practice in our daily lives. One way to cultivate compassion is through active listening. Often, when someone shares their struggles, we rush to offer advice or share our own experiences. But true compassion means being fully present, listening without interrupting, and allowing the other person to feel heard and understood. Another way to practice compassion is through forgiveness. Holding on to resentment or anger only deepens suffering, for both ourselves and others. Forgiveness does not mean condoning harmful actions. It means letting go of the need for revenge or punishment. It is a way of freeing ourselves from the chains of anger and opening our hearts to healing. Compassion also requires patience. When conflicts arise, it's natural to react with frustration or defensiveness. But mindfulness can help us pause and respond with kindness instead. Before speaking or acting, ask yourself, is this coming from a place of love and understanding, or from a place of anger and ego? This simple question can change the tone of an entire interaction. When we make compassion a daily practice, it not only transforms our relationships, but also changes us. The more we extend compassion to others, the more we cultivate inner peace. The Buddha taught, hatred cannot be overcome by hatred. It can only be overcome by love. Compassion is the path that leads us away from anger, judgment, and division, and toward unity and harmony. Buddhism teaches that relationships can be a path for personal growth and spiritual practice when guided by true love. Transforming our relationships begins with letting go of attachment and embracing the principles of mindfulness, kindness, and mutual support. Non-attachment in love. Non-attachment doesn't mean being indifferent or distant. It means loving without trying to control or possess the other person. The Buddha explained, attachment brings fear. Freedom from attachment brings peace. When we let go of the need to control, we create space for authenticity and trust. For example, instead of expecting a partner to behave in a specific way to make us happy, we focus on understanding and supporting them. This shift reduces conflict and fosters deeper connection. Deep listening and mindful communication. Strong relationships are built on mindful communication. The Buddha emphasized the importance of right speech, which involves speaking truthfully, kindly, and at the right time. Equally important is listening deeply, without interrupting, judging, or planning your response. When we listen with full attention, we validate the other person's feelings and create a safe space for open dialogue. This practice not only resolves misunderstandings, but also strengthens emotional bonds. Mutual growth and support. In true love, both individuals support each other's growth, not just emotionally, but also spiritually. This means encouraging practices like mindfulness, meditation, or acts of kindness that foster inner peace and wisdom. For instance, if a friend or partner is struggling, instead of offering quick solutions, we can guide them towards self-awareness and resilience. This approach respects their autonomy while showing care and commitment. Transforming relationships through true love is not about perfection, but practice. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to apply the Buddha's teachings, turning ordinary moments into acts of kindness, understanding, and shared growth. In doing so, our relationships become sources of joy and harmony for ourselves and those we care about. No matter how pure our intentions or how much we practice, challenges in love and relationships will naturally arise. These challenges often arise from misunderstandings, unmet expectations, or the natural differences between individuals. The Buddha's teachings offer practical tools for addressing these difficulties, allowing us to navigate them with mindfulness, patience, and compassion. Dealing with conflict. Conflict is a normal part of any relationship. However, the way we handle it can either strengthen our bond or create more distance. The Buddha taught that anger and resentment are like holding a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. This wisdom reminds us that reacting with anger often hurts us more than it helps. When conflicts arise, mindfulness is our greatest ally. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can pause and take a few deep breaths to calm our minds. This brief moment of reflection allows us to respond from a place of clarity and kindness, rather than from raw emotion. Practicing patience is also key. The Buddha described patience as the highest form of practice. In moments of conflict, patience means giving yourself and the other person time to process emotions without rushing to fix or escalate the situation. One practical approach is to focus on understanding rather than winning. Instead of arguing to prove a point, try to listen deeply to what the other person is saying. What are their underlying needs or concerns? By shifting your focus from defending yourself to understanding the other person, you can create a space for resolution rather than division. Letting go of expectations. One of the main sources of suffering in relationships is the expectation that others should act a certain way or fulfill our needs. Letting go of expectations does not mean lowering your standards or accepting harmful behavior. It means recognizing that we cannot control others and that our happiness cannot depend on their actions. This perspective frees us to love more fully and authentically. For example, if a friend forgets your birthday, it's natural to feel hurt. But instead of dwelling on the disappointment, you might remind yourself that their forgetfulness doesn't erase the love and care they've shown in other ways. Shifting your focus from what they didn't do to what they have done allows you to maintain a sense of gratitude and connection. Forgiveness and healing. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful ways to overcome challenges in love. The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Forgiveness is not about excusing harmful actions, but about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. When someone has hurt you, take time to acknowledge your feelings without judgment. Then, reflect on their humanity and the likelihood that they acted out of ignorance, fear, or pain. This understanding can help you soften your heart and let go of the need for retribution. Healing also involves self-compassion. Sometimes, the hardest person to forgive is ourselves. The Buddha encouraged us to treat ourselves with the same kindness we would offer to a dear friend. When we learn to forgive and accept ourselves, we become better equipped to extend that same grace to others. Overcoming challenges in love is not about avoiding difficulties, but about approaching them with mindfulness and compassion. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to deepen your practice and strengthen your relationships. The Buddha provided a clear and profound framework for cultivating true love in the form of the Four Immeasurables, Brahmaviharas. These qualities, loving kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, sympathetic joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha, are not just ideals to aspire to. They are practices that can transform our hearts and relationships. Loving kindness, metta. Metta is the foundation of true love. It is the sincere wish for all beings to be happy and free from suffering. Unlike attachment-based love, metta is unconditional and universal. It doesn't depend on whether someone is close to us or even whether we like them. Practicing metta begins with yourself. The Buddha encouraged us to start by cultivating loving kindness toward ourselves, saying, "You, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." From there, we extend metta outward, first to those we love, then to neutral people, and finally, to those we find difficult. A practical way to cultivate metta is through meditation. During metta meditation, you repeat phrases like, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be safe," "May I live with ease." Then extend these wishes to others. May you be happy. May you be healthy. Compassion. Karuna. Karuna builds on metta by focusing on alleviating the suffering of others. It is the natural response of a heart that has been touched by loving kindness. Compassion doesn't mean taking on the suffering of others or feeling overwhelmed by it. Instead, it is a balanced and active desire to help. For example, if you see someone struggling, you might offer support or simply be present with them in their pain. Sometimes, compassion is as simple as a kind word or a listening ear. Sympathetic joy, mudita. Mudita is the joy we feel when others are happy. It is the opposite of jealousy or envy. Practicing mudita means celebrating the successes and joys of others as if they were your own. For instance, if a friend gets a promotion or achieves a personal goal, you can practice mudita by genuinely sharing in their happiness without comparing their success to your own. This practice not only deepens your connection with others, but also cultivates a sense of abundance and gratitude in your own life. Equanimity, upekkha. Upekkha is the practice of maintaining balance and stability in the face of life's ups and downs. It is the understanding that everything is impermanent and that clinging to or resisting life's changes leads to suffering. In relationships, upekkha helps us love without attachment. It allows us to support others without becoming overwhelmed by their emotions or struggles. It also helps us accept that we cannot control everything, and that true love respects the freedom and individuality of others. Bringing the Four Immeasurables into daily life. The Four Immeasurables are not abstract ideals. They are practices that we can integrate into our daily lives. Begin with small steps. Set aside time each day to meditate on these qualities. Reflect on how you can bring metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha into your interactions. Notice moments when you fall into judgment, attachment, or resentment, and gently guide yourself back to these principles. The Buddha taught that these qualities are boundless because they have no limits. The more we practice them, the more they grow, enriching our lives and the lives of those around us. True love in Buddhism is not about possession, control, or even personal happiness. It is about cultivating a heart that is open, generous, and free. By practicing the Four Immeasurables, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, we can transform our relationships and ourselves. The Buddha's teachings remind us that love is not something we find or receive. It is something we create and share. As we practice true love, we contribute to a world of greater peace, understanding, and harmony. Let us close with these words of the Buddha. In the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. May these teachings inspire you to walk the path of true love, bringing happiness and freedom to yourself and all beings.